Square collapsed after Hironobu Sakaguchi left the company, said Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu, adding that the situation at Square was awful after he quit. Yeah, not great. Final Fantasy series creator Sakaguchi joined Uematsu on the podcast Nobio to Ishune earlier this month, where they discussed their time together at Square working on the series in the 80s and the 90s. God, I wish I spoke Japanese so I could listen to that. That's fantastic. Sakaguchi resigned in 2001 before officially leaving Square in 2003, along with other key members of the company, ahead of its merger with rival Enix that same year. Yeah, and we all know why that happened, sadly, which is, while Sakaguchi is a genius who is basically the mastermind behind the best years of Final Fantasy, he also went all into Final Fantasy Spirits Within, which is one of the most puzzling movies out there. For those of you who don't know, Final Fantasy Spirits Within is a generic, forgettable, depressing science fiction movie that for some reason is called Final Fantasy. It has nothing to do with Final Fantasy at all. There's one character called Sid, spelt with an S, not a C. It was the first time that Final Fantasy fans felt betrayed by Square. It was the first time that something that didn't feel like Final Fantasy at all had the Final Fantasy name slapped onto it to sell more tickets. And as much as I love Sakaguchi, I don't know what he was thinking when he did this. But you know what, man, we're human. We can't get it. Not everything can be a slam dunk. It's fine. You know, he's done more than enough bloody great work to make up for this. But the sad thing is, the devastating effects of this film can still be felt today, because this bankrupted Squaresoft got Sakaguchi out of the company, who was, you know, the guy who was able to rein in all these deranged geniuses like Nomura and all that. It's what I think caused the merger with Enix, and after Square merged with Enix, that's when it all went to shit. So yeah, Spirits Within showed us what modern FF was about to become. A bunch of skinwalker games wearing FF suits. A bunch of games that do not feel or play like Final Fantasy, and they certainly don't hit in the same way, but they call themselves Final Fantasy. Square collapsed after Sakaguchi left, said Uematsu on the podcast, thanks to Automaton. To put it simply, he's the big boss. Always has been, always will be. Yeah, I mean, I can just totally see that. Like, look at Nomura under Sakaguchi. And then look at Nomura without Sakaguchi. They seem like two completely different creatives at this point. Yeah. But with all due respect to Nomura, the guy is a fucking genius character designer, and we all know that. Uematsu describes Square in its formative years as more of like a club of university students than a serious company. That makes me sad to read that, because yeah, you can just tell that, like, you know, they're a bunch of young, talented professionals full of ambition and optimism, and they aren't already famous yet. They aren't already too successful. They can't afford to rest on their laurels. They have to follow the rules of good craftsmanship and good writing. Otherwise, their games aren't going to sell. Unlike today, when they can shovel out any old mid-slop, any old mixed bag, and a deranged, crazed section of the fan base will hail it like it's the Mona Lisa in the Sistine Chapel of gaming. We didn't even have a proper corporate organization, yet everyone listened to him. It's the kind of quality you have to be born with. That's really interesting, because some people are natural leaders. Some people are naturally born with this quality. Uematsu called Sakaguchi a leader. He may have been bossy and strict, but he was able to attract the people around him. Yeah, it's like, I've had teachers like this in school who the way they lead, they don't even need to threaten with punishment or anything. You just want to do your best work for them because you respect them. You don't want to disappoint them. Uematsu continued, maybe Sakaguchi isn't aware of this, but the situation at Square was awful after he quit. He left and the organization suddenly collapsed. I thought to myself, fuck, I'm Clive, and I should get away from here. Yeah, well, he's not wrong. Earlier this year, Sakaguchi discussed with Eurogamer how his most recent game, Fantasian, is fueled by nostalgia for his past work. Okay, yeah, respect for that, man. Respect for that intention. Though there have been successes in the Final Fantasy series since Sakaguchi's departure, namely 14, the series has struggled to match the 90s golden era. Yeah, well, it hasn't. It's done. The golden age of Final Fantasy, the absolute best run that it had was Final Fantasy IV to Final Fantasy X, 1991 to 2001, which is crazy that it's exactly 10 years. But 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they are all classics. They're not always perfect. 8 is quite an interest. 8 is an interesting mixed bag where it has probably the biggest flaws out of all those games, but its strengths are so strong in terms of visuals and music, it just kind of gets away with it. 10 is interesting because it's the transition game where it's fun in a way a lot of the old games were, but 10 also gives you glimpses for how soy and how Kingdom Hearts everything is about to get. So it's kind of like a birth of a modern age one. But when you see 10-2, it's like, oh, okay, the series is done. Yeah, everything's about to go to shit. So, as for Uematsu, he left Square Enix in 2004, but has since frequently composed pieces for the FF series. Last year, he confirmed he'd be returning for Part 3 of FF7 Remake Trilogy with a main theme. All right, okay. As such, he's not retiring from video game music, as some had feared, but admitted that he is going to cut back on video game music because the time commitment would be too long. There is one last thing I want to say on this. The fact that he says Square collapsed and the situation at Square was awful after he left, they lost their big boss, like behind the scenes just all fell apart. I mean, it really explains why Final Fantasy games just became such a mixed bag of mid-slop afterwards. Like anyone who says, oh no, it was always about change. It's like, nah, this is an excuse invented to cope with the harsh reality of what FF became. It's bullshit, man. Like, if you look at Final Fantasy, say, 1 to 10, you can see a clear progression along the way. Yes, the characters are different. Yes, the stories are different. Yes, this, and that. It's always like innovations upon an existing formula. But that's different from completely throwing that winning formula out the window and just hitting the randomizer button on every single time you make a new FF game. It's ridiculous. This whole Final Fantasy is about change. Sorry, this whole Final Fantasy has always been about change thing. It's a bullshit argument. And it just falls apart the second you apply it to any other game series. Like, Metal Gear Solid, man. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are all pretty fucking... You can make the argument that they're all about change as well. They're always very different from each other, and yet they're all clearly part of the same series. How about this? If you want to say that Final Fantasy has always been about change, it's like, yes, you're right. It changed from being among the best games in the world to not the worst games in the world. That's what it changed into.